Let's start with the president's speech in Arizona. Patrick Buchanan is the MSNBC political analyst, and Mark Penn is a Democratic strategist and a former Hillary Clinton campaign manager, non-Perel, I should say. Let's start with the president. You're an expert on this. You once said on this program, and I want to get the context right, that every president looks forward at some point in their presidency to be president of the people, of all the people, not to be a partisan leader, not to be a government leader.
Well, and I think the president rose to the occasion last night. He connected with the American people, and he did it in an extremely sensitive, nonpartisan way. He really reconnected, I think, to the American people. I think he underscored the reason why America elected him as president.
Pat?
There's no doubt he connected with the American people. It was not a grandiloquent speech, but it was a speech by the leader of a family that suffered a tragic loss, and he's talking about the decency and the goodness of those who died and the bravery of those who participated. It was outstanding, but Chris, he took us to a very higher level when he said, look, let's get up away from this partisanship, this pettiness, this politics, and stand on common ground where we can all agree. And frankly, it was an admonition to both sides in this quarrel we've been having for 5 days to cool it, and let's come together in the memory of these folks.
Well, he's got his job and I got mine. Okay? Well, let's take a look at what the president said about finger pointing. Let's listen.
But what we cannot do is use this tragedy as one more occasion to turn on each other. That we cannot do. As we discuss these issues, let each of us do so with a good dose of humility, rather than pointing fingers or assigning blame. Let's use this occasion to expand our moral imaginations, to listen to each other more carefully, to sharpen our instincts for empathy, and remind ourselves of all the ways that our hopes and dreams are bound together.
You know, I want to talk about the president. I think to the largest extent, and Mark, you're an expert on this, positioning and politics and what you try to do as messaging. I think the president had a job to do for himself last night, in his own defense. He started off his presidency somewhere around 65% on inaugural day. So a lot of people had hope about him. Before we get into the thicket of health care and stimulus packages and financial regulation, where it became ideological. I think he was jammed into that position by the Republican leaders, but he went in there. He's a leader. And then I think last night he regained the footing he had when he started, which is the goodwill of the American people. I think he had to do that. Let's face it, the birthers, they're never going to get the top hand or the high ground, but they had a ground. They had a case. The constant reference to him as being someone illegitimate, not really our national leader. Yeah, he's a Democrat leader, progressive liberal leader, but he's not really leader of our country. I think he pushed that back a lot last night.
Well, I think he certainly did. Look, I think this president's been on a roll since the shellacking and since his trip to Korea. He came back. He had some quick political wins. He put the tax thing to bed, agreed to kind of keep taxes low for all Americans. Then I think he's going about changing his staff. Look, he's making a lot of the changes that President Clinton made, even though people thought he wasn't. I think he absolutely
I think you're right.
was.
Pat, if he hadn't done those preliminary things, moving to the center, could he have done what he did last night? Would he have had the legitimacy?
He'd still have done it, but it is a continuation. But, Chris, you got to take a look at politically what the president's doing. When he made those admonitions, you said, look, I've got my job, he's got his.
My job is different.
He's winning by moving up and away from the left wing of his party and moving above it and working with the Republicans on the tax deal, bringing in Bill Daley, who can work with Republicans, reaching out. And last night he said, we're all in this together. And frankly, the left wing of the Democratic Party, he has said goodbye and good luck. I'm going to get reelected, and I'm going to get back to luster, and he's back up to 52, 53%. And it is working transparently. It is working.
The people that do think he's illegitimate, the birthers out there that believe he's not even an American, that he somehow snuck into the country and somehow snuck into the presidency, the real whack jobs, are out there now saying they want to carry guns on Capitol Hill in the chamber of the House of Representatives. So, Pat, he hasn't relieved himself of that weird kind of right-wing threat. My position is try to keep people honest about that stuff. He didn't want to take him down last night, but somebody has to do. Why did Congressman Gohmert last night, out of nowhere, say we got to bring guns on the floor of the House? Now, here's a birther, a real live one. a full mooner, saying bring guns on the House floor. By the way, I'm a guy that thinks this guy shouldn't be president because he snuck in the country legitimately. I mean, this is kind of a weird overlay here.
Look, I think this
of right-wing thinking, right-wing talking, and bring your gun.
This incident and the way the president's handled it, quite the opposite, is bringing back bills such as the assault weapons ban. I would not be surprised if the State of the Union does not have, after this incident, something like the assault weapons ban. I think the president's going to look. You don't know about that. I think that the mood of the country here, in terms of the gun that he had and how many bullets he shot off,
you mentioned the birthers and the truthers and the others.
No, I mentioned the birthers. The truthers on the left. They're just as bad.
All right, the birthers. You mentioned the birthers, but I'll tell you, Chris, on the right, guys who go out and say somehow because Sarah Palin put out some silly map that this guy could not conceivably have seen, she is morally complicit. They think guys like you are like the birthers.
They're not saying complicit. They're saying this should be wrong, that you should not be using target range. You should not turn a politician into a target in a shooting gallery.
Chris,
you shouldn't say reload. You shouldn't say reload.
Well, let me tell you.
You shouldn't put targets. Were they targets?
You shouldn't say Second Amendment remedies. I agree with that. But let me ask you, who has said Second Amendment remedies 1,000 times on the air?
Sharon
Angle said it once.
Why is she using it?
I agree with you. You would say, look, Sharon, don't.
Because I want it to stop.
But are you inflaming or informing?
Well, I don't know why a person wants to repeat it because I tell them to stop doing it.
But you keep repeating it.
You mean I have the power to do this?
Let me tell you,
she yesterday said to bear arms means to vote. Do you believe that's an appropriate way of saying you vote? You bear arms.
Well, I think to keep and bear arms.
She said it yesterday.
Well, I think it means you got a right to be armed in your own home.
Of course, that's not. Nobody. This is like precious bodily fluids in Dr. Strangelove. You keep bringing up guns. What do guns have to do with the discussion of free speech or free voting?
What do guns have to do?
Yeah.
Guns are a constitutional right.
Well, of course they are, but why bring it up when you're talking about voting?
But look, Chris, we have used military metaphors in
military. These are particular to do with
what is a campaign about if not a military
I know that.
maneuver?
I heard that argument. No, there's a particular. We used to use all kinds of sports metaphors about politics, which are harmless. Baseball, hardball, horse race. Everybody did that for fun, going back to your buddy Jack Tremont, all the way back. Then all of a sudden lately, it's gunplay. It's all of a sudden reload, lock and load. Who did that all the time?
All right,
you. I mean, everybody's doing that.
I said 1996.
What did lock and load mean?
All right, what I said in New Hampshire is mount up and ride to the sound of the guns. Do you think I meant we're going to be shooting each other? I said, come on, you guys. We're going to lose this election. I say, come and join the campaign.
That's a warfare reference. That's not a ballistic reference.
Coming in.
You're an expert on this. I don't know what Frank Lentz is telling the right to use. I know that Sarah Palin Evans yesterday will not pull away from the gun reference. Why doesn't she just say a little less talk about guns at this point would be nice? That's all she has to say.
Let's remember the Republicans.
You're not going to talk about guns. By the way, those are targets. They put crosshairs.
I'll tell you why
she called them bullseyes.
I'll tell you why she doesn't talk. Doesn't say it.
Why?
Because she thinks her adversaries are not acting in good faith. They want an apology so they can rub her name in the dirt when she did nothing wrong, Chris. She did nothing wrong.
Okay, why did she put Gabrielle Giffords in the bullseye?
They put the district in the. It used the crosshair. I don't know.
Okay, well that's.
Yeah. But let's get to look. There are two issues here. Number one, the Republicans and the right get a lot of support from people that own guns, which is why they use those metaphors.
It's not about gun ownership. It's about voting in our democracy.
But second, the real thing here is that Sarah Palin put out an awful video that was way out of step with the country and really did herself a lot of damage yesterday.
I think Sarah Palin was winning this battle before the video came out. I think the whole video is fine, but I do think they've used selected excerpts and butted it against Obama.
I agree. Like juxtaposed against Obama. Let's take a look at the president talking about something that has nothing to do with guns. It has to do with the future of the country. Let's listen.
She was off to meet her congresswoman, someone she was sure was good and important and might be a role model. She saw all this through the eyes of a child, undimmed by the cynicism or vitriol that we adults all too often just take for granted. I want to live up to her expectations. I want our democracy to be as good as Christina imagined it. I want America to be as good as she imagined it. All of us, we should do everything we can do to make sure this country lives up to our children's expectations.
Well, that's, of course, his tribute to the loss, really, of honoring the loss of Christina Taylor. Green, of course, I identify only because Dallas Green, her grandfather, was our pitcher and our manager in Philadelphia for all those years. I mean, he has some public recognition, but that is irrelevant to the situation here. What do you think about that? Rush Limbaugh trashed him completely for that today.
Oh, I wouldn't say that at all. I mean, she came to that to kind of see how government works, and I think that he really encapsulated both the child's feelings and I think made it almost heroic in nature, and I think really did, I think did a wonderful thing in that particular clip.
As you said, he's got his job. He did it well. That was a beautiful thing. That is a statement that everybody, even the birthers and the truthers and you and me, could stand and say, that's well done. It's a wonderful thing he said about that little girl.
He did.
He did his job.
Well above politics.
Yeah, well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
You and I will disagree, as we should. We won't be working here anymore. Thank you, Pat Buchanan and Mark Penn.